we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado, this is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
So we tighten that up, and I think it's more fun now, honestly.
Absolutely. More lucid.
I remember the combos, what the guest is actually saying. I'm not just booze-brained over here.
Sure.
Yeah, here we are, 286. Rob, welcome.
Fantastic. Honor to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely.
Yes. Just so everybody knows, this is a local Denver business owner.
Yes, sir.
It's great to have you, and we love talking to entrepreneurs.
Happy to be here.
And I'm guessing that like a dog grooming, that and like the storefront, was that your first venture as an entrepreneur? Or
Actually, it is not.
Okay.
I started doggy daycare with my girlfriend in 2003 called For the Love of Dog, and that was the genesis of us getting into the dog business.
Okay.
In the late 90s, early 2000s, I was working for a small startup company, a little .com IT company, and I was operations manager there. So I saw as the .com bubble was rapidly deflating in the early 2000s, my girlfriend came with me while I was assisting my CEO's care of his dog by dropping her off at a doggy daycare. And back then it was like a vanguard, like doggy daycare was very much a new thing. So she came with me to pick up Emma, this little lab mix, and saw, it was like a all indoors chain link, pea gravel, smelled like
Pee.
dog piss and defecation. And she's like, she just has that mindset of like taking a existing model and like leveling it up. So when I knew the business was winding down, and she had the idea of wanting to start a doggy daycare, I gladly jumped on board with that with her. So in 2003, we opened up For the Love of Dog, and got that going. And even though it was vanguard, it became very popular very quickly.
Yeah.
And within a couple of years, we started looking for another location because we were like rapidly hitting our daily limits in the facility that we had. And I remember sitting down with my father, who's an attorney, going over the lease documents with my girlfriend, and he's like, "This is a pretty big liability, At the time, it was just a big gamble of if this will work. And or at that time, our break even was $50 a day, and pretty quickly we were hitting $100 a day and having to limit how many dogs we could have. So we started looking for other locations. We were really spoiled because we're in Glendale. We're off of Cherry in Virginia, right over by the Cherry Creek. What was then at Cherry Creek Athletic Club is now Lifetime Cherry Creek, which breaks my heart. Another story, but
Okay.
we started looking for other locations, but the zoning for doggy daycare is very specific, and Glendale being like,
With all the barking and
usually it'd end up in like a very industrial
yeah.
setting, versus in Glendale, we were basically, in the town of Mayberry, where it's just like, you knew the mayor and the city council on a first name basis, but you're surrounded by some of the most affluent neighborhoods in Denver. You got Hilltop, Belcaro, Cherry Creek, Country Club. So we just kind of kept going and finding these spaces that were zoned for it, but didn't fit our kind of more boutique style doggy daycare. So we pivoted to doing retail, and when we initially set out, it was just like a do-it-yourself dog wash and maybe some bathing. And so in 2006 or 2005, we started looking for locations for that. We had a lease drawn up for a location on 15th and Market, which at that time was still, downtown's renewal into like a urban neighborhood was still kind of new. So we went down on a Sunday to see what the foot traffic was on 15th and Market Street, because it had, it was cool, like exposed brick kind of loft thing, everything we were looking for. And we went to brunch at Bistro Vendome, which was still there at the time, which is another sad thing. But came out from having brunch, and Larimer Square was just packed with people, and it had like a great energy. And we happened to see one of the spaces was papered over. So we're like, why had we never looked here before? My girlfriend, who's my partner named Dana Hood, she emailed just the general information for Larimer Square that Sunday afternoon, and by that evening, the manager of the block, the property manager, had gotten back to us, said we love the concept.
Like
can we
less
meet?
than 24 hours?
Yeah. So
Wow.
everything kind of was just kind of, providence, synergy. Everything fell into place from there. We cut off negotiations with 15th and Market and started looking at the places on Larimer. And when we got to tour the space that we're in now, that we've been in for since October of 2006, we had our official opening. I had a flashback to my freshman year at CU Denver. That CU Denver back in the late 80s was so small that like they literally had their bookstore was on Larimer Square, and I remember that the space we were looking at was the bookstore for CU Denver. So, but going into the retail and the dog wash thing was just kind of a natural evolution from the doggy daycare. Very different businesses, but similar. Providing fun stuff for dogs and caring for dogs.
Yeah.
So
I worked for a doggy daycare for like 4 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Which
you
one?
Camp Bowell?
Camp Bowell Parker.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
And,
Gina,
they
all
still
the
around?
owners,
Mhm.
they're all
Do
awesome.
they still exist?
Yes.
They're the largest. If I'm not mistaken, the last I checked, they were the largest doggy
Yeah.
daycare franchise in the country.
I
She did a
think
great
so.
job with it. Yeah.
Yeah, Gina was good. That's why I stayed there so long because, usually you get like people coming out of high school, they're there for like a year or like a summer,
hmm
but the management was so good. And honestly, working with the dogs
It's
it
therapeutic.
changed, it
Yeah.
changed who I
Mhm.
was.
Yeah.
I changed after working with dogs for several years. Like I became more like physical, like I would touch more and
Mhm.
you could pick up on your own body language and how it affects
Absolutely.
the room because dogs are reading your body language and
And
your
the
energy.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Caesar Milan, and that's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of the things that we learned at the early part of it too, because Caesar Milan was just kind of coming out then, and it was like, oh my God, there's this whole another layer of communication that I'd been unaware of my entire life,
hmm
where
He's
it's not
epic.
only your energy, but like how your body language, how you're communicating with the dogs, and if you get frustrated and lose your patience, that the dogs that's low energy, and you teaches you to be kind of like calm, like a gunslinger, to like stay cool even though things are going
hmm
sideways around you, and you find the solution versus like adding to the problem. So
Have
Yeah.
you seen his newer stuff? I mean, because
I
the
have
Dog
not.
Whisperer came out then, and he has a new program now. I don't know if it's on Hulu or one of those where it kind of more goes into the human behavior and not just the focus on the
Yeah.
dog and like kind of training humans a bit. And he's just really good. I think
I,
I've always been inspired by his work.
I agree, and I think he's done so much good. I mean, like anything, when you get so famous, suddenly you become the subject of many um, disagreements.
Criticisms.
It's
Yeah.
like anything, people are gonna have opinions.
Oh yeah,
People
hmm
thought that he was like a negative training, but like the whole thing, which I love when they incorporated into South Park. I don't know if you ever saw that
Oh
episode,
yeah.
but
yeah.
the way I think his gift is of communication, where he's able to like elucidate the owner of what behavior you're doing that's creating the unwanted behavior in the dog.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, my dog keeps doing this thing and it's just driving me crazy. It's like, well, that's because you're doing this, this, and this. And that's leading to the dog's behavior like this. Or you're coming in at low energy, and dogs are pack animals and they need to have a leader. And
Yeah.
if you're coming in low energy and
Then they
uh,
want to be the leader.
then they're going to take over and
Yeah.
become the leader of the pack. So just fascinating stuff. But yeah,
It
you
really
learn
is.
so many different things from dogs, and it just really brings into sharp focus like what's important in your life. I
hmm
think the hardest thing about the businesses we have is you get so attached to the dogs as customers, and you develop such a unique relationship with the owners because you're caring for their precious little fur
Like a
babies.
kid. Yeah. A kid in some
And
sense. hmm
one of my early on at the daycare, one of the employees pointed out, the longer you're in business, the more your customers are going to literally die because their lifespans are so much shorter
hmm
than ours. And having been through many difficult losses of dogs, the only way I can square that their lives are shorter than ours is that they're perfect little Zen masters, perfect little spiritual beings who have no care for yesterday or tomorrow. They're just always present, and
hmm
they're here to bring us into the now and to connect us with that. You know,
What is
basically,
happening
yeah,
currently?
all that we ever have.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you know Eckhart Tolle, but like,
Oh yes. Yes.
he has a great book that he did in collaboration with the guy who illustrates that comic called Mutts, and it's called Guardians of Being. And I thought it was just such
Mm.
a fascinating way to think about it. Like, dogs are it's such a unique relationship we've built with them over millennia, where they count on us for everything, but they also give so much back
They do.
in exchange. So Yeah.
I'm sure this industry's changed a lot too since '06. Like route to market back then, before Facebook and a lot of the social media stuff, was like customer acquisition more word of mouth, or was it just so much of that foot traffic?
We literally did all kinds of guerrilla marketing for the doggy daycare, which was kind of fun before opening. That was the first business that my girlfriend and I had opened up, and it was fun. We were like, I mean, she's just a marketing genius, but she came up with like all these like things that we were printing up literally on our home printer, like coming soon, like doggy daycare. And we're going around to all the different neighborhoods and
Smart.
coffee shops and
Old
like,
school.
tacking things up, because that was before the smartphone and obviously the social media. So it was just all guerrilla marketing, going out and literally.
There was something fun about those
Yeah,
days.
it was kind of
I
cool
miss
because
those
it's like
days.
that
Yeah.
physicality of like, I'm leaving a stack of things here, and then someone comes in with that actual tangible item, like, oh, I saw this over at this coffee shop on 12th
Yep.
Avenue or something like that.
I will say the sticker campaign still kind of works.
It's yeah. People love stickers though.
Sure.
They want to stick it to their Nalgene or
Mhm.
whatever. So there's
Laptop,
that. Yeah,
all that, yeah.
laptops.
Mhm.
So stickers, I feel like, are kind of still that old school touch. But like bands, you don't see them stapling flyers to telephone poles
Sure.
anymore. They just send a blast out on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they pack the venue.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
It has changed. It has changed. But I do agree with the energies. That's kind of interesting stuff, like about how dogs keep us present and how important that
Mhm.
is. Like there is a layer of life that is so that it's there at all times, and it's just, are you paying attention to
Sure.
it? And
Yeah.
the whole demeanor thing too, because at a doggy daycare, like you walk in there, if someone's having a bad day or their energy's off, like all of a sudden the yard starts getting crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like,
They pick up on all that
yeah,
stuff.
so the dogs start getting wild in the yard. I know I've told like this story 1,000 times probably, but like if you go in there and you have a strong posture and you just start doing laps, like controlled walking laps around the yard, then all of a sudden you got these 30 crazy dogs that are all following you
Mhm.
and like all in line and in order. That really taught me a lot. That taught me a lot growing up. It really
It
did.
is amazing, and it's something you can take out into everyday life because uh, leadership energy translates into so many different things. Whether it's like you're negotiating a sale or you're doing something like that. It's like what kind of energy do you bring to the interaction? So
Mhm.
yeah,
And so we'll kind of keep it on dog savvy for a little bit.
okay,
So that's the current business, awesome grooming facility, and then also doggy boutique,
sure, yes,
right? Okay,
precisely,
so and this is off of Larimer Street downtown,
correct.
and you've been there. I said during our promo like over 20 years, but it's actually 18 years.
Just every 18 years, we opened in
Mhm.
October of 2006 officially. Like I said, we started out with just the retail item. So,
Mhm.
the boutique was kind of the bread and butter of the business. We opened up, I mean, the day we opened up, it was just, we started making sales because downtown Denver at that time, even though it was just kind of starting to hit that critical mass with more retail and restaurants and the loft, the city living becoming more and more popular. We quickly pivoted to, because we were offering like bath and brush
Mhm.
or do it yourself wash, but then we kept getting these requests for grooming, and we want grooming. So I kind of started dipping our toes into the grooming business, and I remember early on being advised from another business that was on Downing and Alameda. It's another dog grooming shop, and he's like, don't get into dog grooming because it can be
Mhm.
kind of like. And I'd worked in a hair salon before too. It's you get a very creative type of personality that may not necessarily translate into a good business fit. But the dog grooming was just so high demand that we switched to doing dog grooming as well, and the trajectory of building the dog grooming business has been pretty amazing as well. And then again, you build that relationship where you see the dogs on a regular basis. You're seeing them every 4, 6, 8 weeks,
Mhm.
and it becomes part of their routine. Uh, but it's been challenging coming from 2006, where the second we opened the door, we were just making sales,
Mhm.
and it was a pretty recession-proof business early on, where we opened in 2006, and then having the 2008 DNC in Denver was amazing. We were selling like um, political merch, like hand over fist. We had these
Mhm.
Barack Obama bandanas and all this fun stuff like that, and just seeing the city just like thriving and just being like like a true metropolitan area was really cool. And then the financial crisis kind of like took a little bit of the wind out of the sails, but we kind of found that, when things were tight like that, people actually felt got more comfort out of like spoiling their dogs than spoiling themselves.
Interesting.
So that kind of got us through that. And then it was just kind of like, smooth sailing all the way up until COVID. And then when COVID hit, it just kind of really took the wind out of the downtown business district
To this day, you say?
because
No improvements,
no,
really.
I mean, I'd say it's just gotten worse and worse based on my sales.
Yeah.
So I used to be 2/3, retail sales for my revenue, and then the grooming was just kind of gravy on top of that. And now it's the inverse.
Oh,
So
interesting.
my retail sales are just hit or miss. Combination of the downtown business district just being hollowed out from COVID measures, and then all the disruption with construction and everything. Talked to a customer who had a bar on 16th Street, and he's like, "Yeah, we were just starting to see the light coming out of COVID, and then the city decided to tear up 16th Street Mall, and it was
Yeah.
they put up all this construction fencing, and he said they literally had to shut down because the business just fell off a cliff." But also, we might as well have all the change at once. We got acquired, our property got acquired in 2021 by a real estate investment trust out of North Carolina that made the original owner an offer he couldn't refuse, which I no hard feelings on him. He did an amazing job creating Larimer Square, and growing up in Colorado, that was just always kind of like one of the crown jewels of the restaurant and retail areas, which was just such a prideful thing to be able to say, we have this business on Larimer Square, because growing up, it was like
Everyone knew.
yeah, it's kind of like
that's the spot.
It's kind of like the Cherry Creek North, but in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very metropolitan and hip and trendy, and great restaurants and fun shops. So then in 2021, when in the midst of all the COVID stuff and the city measures as far as like shutting down operations, I was the only retail business that was open or allowed to be open during COVID. So in 2020, it was like a post-apocalyptic movie where I look out, it's like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
And I was
What
sitting.
strange times. That was strange
Yeah,
times.
Weird
it was
times.
really strange
But
times.
you were an essential business, right?
Yeah, because I was considered an essential business, even though my bread and butter was like kitschy, leashes, collars, beds, bowls, treats, toys, and a little bit of food. Since I sold dog food,
Right.
I was considered essential. But then, so I was doing okay with that, still doing grooming, and then, obviously, hindsight's 2020. But the mayor then suddenly decided that dog grooming was too dangerous to put soap and water on dogs, because they were trying to limit face-to-face interaction. So they shut down dog grooming in the entire city. And that just like killed my business. So I literally ended up cutting back my hours, even though I could be open. I just didn't have, there was nobody walking around downtown.
Yeah.
I'd be open for a limited time to fulfill food, treats, and stuff like that. And then my phone's just ringing off the hook. Can I get in for grooming? I'm like, I am not allowed per the city ordinance.
Yeah,
How long did that go for?
I kind of want to say like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like start like a
Barbershops shut down, too.
bootleg grooming.
There were people doing it out of their house.
The underground grooming.
I mean, like literally facing consequences from the city if they got caught, but there were
Really?
people doing it out of their house and things like that. And then to me, it was that grooming is, I'm sure Paolo would tell you, the grooming is an essential service. If you're not cutting their nails, and for dogs that need haircuts, if you let them go 6 months without a haircut, it's a health hazard, because
for the
they can
animal.
get all kinds of skin conditions and other subsequent health problems. But so that really kind of took the wind out of our sails, killed our momentum, and the retail sales have never really recovered since. But so then in 2021, we got officially acquired by the new landlord, and their initial idea, which was leaked to, Denver's a small town, and they sent out to all the commercial realtors a site plan for Larimer Square, and my spot was known as like K201 or something like that instead of Dog Savvy. And I was like, that's a little interesting. So they were shopping around the spaces to see if other commercial realtors wanted to, bring in different people, because their original plan was to turn Larimer Square into the Rodeo Drive of the Rockies, where they wanted to have all the Gucci, Hermes, big name brands on that little block. However, that had been tried before in the 80s, didn't work out as well. And from what I understand, the retailers that they were trying to woo into that location were like, we're good. We're in Cherry Creek North, 2.5 miles away.
Yeah.
There's only so many people that want to go out and spend 700-800 or more on handbag. So,
We
kind
don't
of
need two
would
stores.
saturate the
Yeah.
market. So, but that unfortunately led them to being really hard nosed with my legacy neighbors who, they came in and I was one of a couple retailers that had a lease that went into 2023 or 2022, 2022 or 23. But we were beyond the leases of a lot of the my neighbors. So the neighbors who they were originally negotiating with were like, we're going to walk because they didn't want to pay triple the amount with less. It's like it's COVID. It's like they weren't reading the room very well,
Yeah.
and they insisted on they just wouldn't budge on their negotiation. So it ended up pushing out Bistro Vendome, which was a great well-known local restaurant, James Beard award-winning chef. Pushed them into they're now over in Park Hill, and then we ended up losing a lot. The market was the first casualty. That wasn't the landlord's fault. That was when the city shut down the restaurants. It was literally the owner of the markets, and it was their 39-year anniversary of being in business. I think he was looking for an exit plan and took it as a sign from the universe that it was time to close up. I wish he would have sold it, but it was definitely weird, unprecedented times. And so as more and more of my legacy neighbors started getting pushed out basically by not being able to negotiate a lease rate that they could afford to stay at, I just ended up in a spot that went from like a flourishing retail and restaurant area into a spot that was just a blight of empty spaces where there was less and less things to do. You start losing, you pretty quickly got to the point where that critical mass of different appeal for different demographics to come to the location became minimal. So it was like very, very little foot traffic, and that we're still dealing with that now. So
That's definitely a challenge.
It's really difficult and disheartening. To pivot back to the landlord, to their credit, they've been incredibly generous and accommodating for us because I'll credit to my girlfriend because we used the diminished retail environment that they created to negotiate a very aggressive lease rate for us to allow us to stay there.
And see, here's the thing though, is like I feel like a lot of people with leases, they just think it's a take as is thing. And like you can actually put together a good, proposition statement of to why you feel what is the actual fair market rate. And most places, if anyone listening could take anything out of this, it's like negotiate your lease for where you live, or if you rent a business, we negotiated in this place
That's what
too.
you should.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm all about haggling, and
It's so fun.
my girlfriend and I, having a partner is good because I was able to be like the good cop and she played the bad cop, and we were able to really hold their feet to the fire because it was just like, do you want yet another shuttered business on this block? Because that makes it more difficult for them to bring in new people or new businesses if it's like, oh well,
there's no business.
yeah, you're going to be the only man on the block, or do you want to or have a business that's been here, especially since we're been there for so long. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things like where don't accept the first offer. There's always there's in a lease negotiation. That's why they call it a negotiation. You're going to counter and a counter, and it's a back and forth until you reach something that's meaningful
it's so
for both
fun.
sides.
The first no is always a yes.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
No, the fifth no is a
no?
yes.
I mean,
So I used to
sometimes
sell cars too, so
Yeah.
I'd be
Oh
like,
wow, that's cool.
until you just got to be tactful about how you do it.
that's
Precisely.
great.
But
Yeah.
so it sounds like you are used to pivoting your business when necessary.
Sure.
It sounds like the market flipped on as far as what was your most profitable items. Now it's turning into grooming more.
Correct.
So is it like time for another pivot with the business, do you think?
We're kind of in that gray zone where I'm seeing we've got speaking of lease negotiations, I've got a seventh amendment on my lease because things haven't improved. The landlord keeps promising, oh, we're going to get more businesses open, but it's just the hurry up and wait. They've got an Ariat coming in, because I like your boots, but
Thank you.
Ariat is coming in on where Above Comedy Works. You ever guys go to Comedy
Yeah.
Works? That's a
Interesting location though. For
That is a
everybody, I
Denver
feel like.
landmark.
Off
But
of
yeah, so it's going to
15th, right?
be on 15th and Larimer.
Mhm.
Beautiful corner location. They've got a Japanese high-end restaurant coming across where Ted's Montana Grill had been for years. Spoke to the landlord. That was supposed to be open already, but now it's like going to be Q3, Q4 this year.
Okay.
So, and that's I don't know exactly what the root cause is, but I did speak to another one of my customers who's fairly knowledgeable about city politics, and we're apparently currently running our uh, inspection and permitting office with a skeletal crew because
Mhm.
there's I don't know if it's not funding or if it's not a priority to get businesses up and running. But to me, as a business owner who's like dying on the vine right now because of lack of other businesses, and I see coming soon signs, and then you never see a contractor coming or going from it. It's like what's going on with why are these businesses like they've got their signage up, but that's it. It's
Yeah.
like, and then weeks and months go by, and it's like there's no activity. So
Mhm.
I feel like that's a headwind again from the city. But as they're supposed to be opening up more and more stuff, so I'm kind of like in my mind hoping for January 1st we'll have a clear idea like if it's tenable to continue down there.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain, and ever the optimist, keeping on the sunny side of the street, that
Mhm.
things will turn around. The economy is going to start picking back up as we get more deregulation and less of a tax burden.
Mhm.
Hopefully, if what we've been sold is true, but I'm hoping that, and again, I hope city leadership comes on board with the fact that without safety and cleanliness and other businesses, facilitating businesses opening in a timely fashion, downtown Denver is just going to stay a kind of a dead zone.
Well,
Um,
then the homeless is, that's gotten a lot worse since
yeah,
2020. And
it
Yeah,
has.
and 16th Street Mall. I was just down there a couple weeks ago eating at that pizza place there, Brooklyn's Finest,
Oh,
and,
cool. What's across street?
it was where was it?
you're like 18th and something.
Yeah, I was at 14th and Stout, and I walked over to 16th, right up that street there
Okay.
from Stout. It was called Brooklyn's Finest. But to your point, I'm like, is this even open? I was going through all this construction fencing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It just you couldn't even see it. I would have walked right by it almost because of all the scaffolding and all the stuff
Really?
that was around there.
That 16th Street Mall project really threw a wrench into the downtown Denver business district as well. Growing up here in the 80s when they opened that, it was like a godsend because it brought that breath of fresh air into downtown. My father's an attorney office down there for decades, and it was just like in high school you'd go down there and just be bored to tears because it was just like, oh, here's another office building. But when they opened up the 16th Street Mall, it's like, oh, there's shopping,
Mhm.
there's restaurants, there's all
Good
this different
food,
stuff,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful metropolitan civic project to turn like a street into like a big mall. But when they shut it down, what I understand is that they started refurbishing it. It was long past due for the infrastructure to be redone under it. But then they would hit a point where they found that the original contractors, instead of removing the old trolley tracks, they just paved over them. And you may want to fact check me on that, but that's what I understand is that
Okay.
so all of a sudden, instead of just becoming like a smaller, quick project where they can get in, switch out pipes, like electrical, etc., they had to like remediate all this other
Hmm.
crud out of there. So
Wow.
that's what slowed it down. But I do think they have it open from at least Lawrence to Union Station now.
How long is this like
That's been going on for
refurb?
years. It was supposed to be, it was supposed to be done, I think, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
They're saying it's supposed to be open by spring of or summer of
26?
this year,
Okay.
which tells me it's probably going to be
Next year.
spring
Next year,
spring or
yeah.
summer of
Add another 12
26.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Because that like is such a natural corridor for my foot traffic from people that because there's hotels all
Mhm.
throughout the city, but that 16th Street Mall was just like such a natural corridor for people visiting the city to go and explore, and then they would look down Larimer and see our ticonic lights over the street and be
And
like,
everybody,
ooh,
yeah, wants to
shiny,
go.
yeah, let's go and check out
Mhm.
what's down there. And that is, it was a huge drop in foot traffic when that was closed. And then I know I'm a big dude, and like I would go up there. I was walking doing like a bank deposit or something, and it's like you got skyscraper here, construction fence there, and there's like nowhere to run. It's
Yeah.
like thinking tactically, it's like there's no escape route because you got
You're in a tunnel.
Yeah, you're basically in a kill zone. You're like in a tunnel where you're
Yeah.
like there's no escaping, and it's like I've never felt scared, but like it's not something like I
You
would,
don't feel super safe either.
I'm not going to recommend people visiting
Yeah.
the city to go up and check it out. So I think that they are making stride, hitting benchmarks as far as like opening parts of it. I think the spot between Lawrence and Larimer was the first block that they opened, and the way it looks is amazing. I'm all here for it. I mean, they did a really nice job, like keeping the same theme but modernizing it, and it looks really cool. But just like anything, it just takes longer than they anticipate. So I am really excited too. The Denver mayor has gotten, I think, like over 500 million in funding approved for the Lodo refurbishment.
Okay.
But I'm a little concerned with when I went through the survey of like what their priorities are as far as like bringing business and community back into Denver versus like all these things that sound nice on paper, but I don't know what kind of draw it brings to the city. So
it's a lot to be decided yet.
yeah,
And
it's
this
still
year's
very,
gonna be
very, very preliminary.
pretty
so.
contingent. Yeah. Well, you've traveled downtown a lot, so you know Denver well. I've been on the hunt for the best slice of pizza in Denver,
Yeah.
and so I have. People say Marco's Cold Fried's good. I went to that Brooklyn's Finest. They were
And
pretty
you
good.
like the Basil one?
Basil Docks was good.
Yeah, and that's where I'm near like Holly Street in Glendale too.
Okay.
So, what's your opinion? Best slice in Denver?
The sites in Denver, I eat way more frozen pizza than I'd care to admit.
Okay.
So my go-to right now is this brand that is called Porta, which you can get at Whole Foods or Sprouts.
Okay.
It's a Italian flour, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have all our GMO and glyphosate sprayed wheat, but it has like that thin. It has that like beautiful crust and good sauce. But I have heard good things about Pie Hole on South Broadway.
Pie Hole?
Yeah, so it's like in that Sobo area. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, just since I eat so much frozen pizza at home, I don't.
Do you,
I don't
do you ever
grab a
do
lot.
like the cauliflower pizzas?
I have
From,
tried
like,
those.
Costco or something?
My girlfriend is she likes to go. She's not gluten free, but she
Yeah.
likes to minimize gluten. And I do like the mod pizza, which
those are good.
we discovered in
Mhm.
Scottsdale, and then we were like thrilled to find one. There's I live down kind of south, so they have a mod pizza over by Park Meadows.
Mhm.
That's pretty good, for like counter service pizza. It's really good, and their cauliflower gluten free pizza is pretty good.
I haven't tried the cauliflower one.
Yeah, you got to try it.
I've been to that mod.
I
They're
love
good.
gluten. I don't. It doesn't seem to bother me.
Yeah,
But
it's delicious.
yeah. So
Now, have you served in the military as well?
I have not. My father was in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got mad respect for people that are in the military.
And how about like you never worked in like the supply chain industry?
I have not. no.
Okay. There was just a couple.
Was there a reason for those questionings?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because before we started like recording, you would say like 10-4 confirmed.
I was saying copy. Yeah,
Copy.
Copy that. But I got
Yeah,
that from
copy.
We said that.
to call back. I listened to a lot of Jocko podcasts.
Okay,
a
yeah,
lot of
Jocko's the
military podcasts.
Yeah,
Love Jocko.
I was just listening to a Jack Carr
yeah.
podcast on I was driving over here.
These guys are
So,
badass.
yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like that middle-aged American guy. I'm like fascinated with Vietnam and World War II and all those different
Vietnam,
things.
I could go off on that conversation. What a crazy war. I have not served. I've had a bunch of friends that have served as well. So
Yeah, we love the military.
We
Me too.
support the vets here. We've talked to a lot of vets. Suicide prevention programs
Absolutely.
and a bunch of that stuff is all extremely important. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, no, I just have my dad was in the Marine Corps. I was born in '71 in San Diego
Okay.
because my dad was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and my parents loved to joke that in '71 you didn't have a cell phone you could call for the same charge overseas as you can making a local call. So he spent a fortune. My dad was in Okinawa. He went in as a JAG. He did ROTC at CU to put himself through CU, and then he went to OCS, Officer Candidate School, through the Marine Corps, and they put him through DU Law School, and said there was nothing like the prospect of being waist deep in a rice paddy with an M16 and a group of guys looking to you for leadership to keep your grades up.
Yeah.
So then he graduated from law school, was sent to Okinawa after he finished all his training, etc. So when I was being born, they spent a fortune on long distance phone calls just to call me Junior. But just always had a respect for the military. I wish, in retrospect, I would have done break in between high school and college and gone into the military, I think it would have been good for me. But hindsight's 2020 again. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just have a huge appreciation and gratitude for the people that do choose to serve.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm just fascinated listening to the stories. If you like Vietnam, I don't know if you've heard of John Stryker Meyer, but he was one of my favorite Jocko. I think he's been on Jocko's podcast a few times because he wrote these books called like Over the Fence and things like that, because he was in SOG, which was like the genesis for the SEALs and the Rangers and all those different things, these special forces. So
Yeah.
but I'm just fascinated by the human will to overcome adversity,
Yeah.
things like that, and then the call to bravery to put yourself in harm's way to protect your buddies. I was just listening to a micro podcast where he was interviewing a veteran who'd been stationed in Afghanistan, and their combat forward operating base had been attacked, and just like listening to the emotion in the voices, it's just fascinating. I can listen to like a 2-hour podcast of that stuff without even blinking. So
Yeah.
It's
but
real
that's where I
stories.
get. So I incorporate the copy that into my.
I respect it. There's nothing wrong with that.
10-4, copy
Yeah.
that for sure. Jocko's great. I love like his little promo clips that come out, motivational stuff. The first one I think I saw by him, like where I was like, this guy is onto something, was where he did the good. That promo clip he did. He's like, oh, lost job, good.
Yep.
Don't have good enough equipment, good. More time to
Exactly.
get better.
Mhm.
It's all about mindset too, which I
Right.
think is like such a amazing blessing for us to live in this time frame where we can be exposed to so many different things just through a smartphone or a web connection, to be able to like hear so many different perspectives. But,
yeah. Technology's great. What's your thoughts on AI though, and where it's going? You
I think it's fascinating. I think it is one of those things. It's like any tool, if it's used for ill. Like I'm terrified of the Orwellian Big Brother aspects of it. I mean, they're already doing that in China, like where they've got, if you leave home without your phone in China, you will literally have, through their facial recognition and all that different stuff, they'll have someone come and like gently escort you back to your house so that you have your phone on you so they can track you all the
That's
time.
crazy.
But AI is just going to level those things up. But it's all about how it's going to be used. It's going to level up productivity. I love Tom Bilyeu. If you guys are into podcasting, Tom Bilyeu with the impact theory.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Heard the name.
Impact theory is Tom Bilyeu is an amazing. He's an entrepreneur, self-made guy who started with nothing. He and his partners founded Quest protein bars, and he ended up selling it as $1 billion company. So now he's got the FU money. So he just goes and he started doing a podcast, all again about like positivity, like, encouraging. He does like a lot of
Like taking the risks and stuff.
entrepreneur incubators and things like that. He's just all about, like the business mindset and success mindset. But he's just a amazing guy as far as like, he talks to a lot of different people. He's a very, middle of the road guy. And it's just fascinating how, in so many different topics can be discussed. So, yeah.
I mean, I listen to motivational stuff probably on average 3 to 4 mornings out of the week.
Cool.
For like the last 3 weeks, I've been consistently doing that, and I've went through a couple different phases where I've done that. And anytime that I'm constantly listening to it, there's always like I'm already an optimistic person, but there's all these little nuggets out there, just little slight changes in perspective, like learning how like just my posture can influence a yard of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Like little things like
Little
that.
cheat codes.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's very interesting. And what I notice is sometimes I try to share this information because I think it's important to empower people. And some people, I feel like, get a little thrown off by it. Like they don't want to hear the motivation.
Sure.
And I always find that interesting because anytime that I was truly dialed into the motivational stuff and it made me uncomfortable to where I didn't want to hear about it or this and that, is because they were talking about my dumbass.
Exactly. It's pushing you to an edge.
Yeah.
And I think that's oftentimes, whether it's in recovery or whatever, like if people are like resistant to it, it's because it's like their own personal boundary that they're hitting up against. And they don't want, sometimes they don't want to make that change because they're uncomfortable with the idea of that what they're doing now isn't optimized for them. But to go back to the AI, I think that's what Tom Bilyeu was talking about. He uses Chat GPT on a regular basis. He has the paid subscription one. But talking about like, the fact that we have the capacity to have a PhD in whatever subject you choose at your fingertips 24/7. And it's like, so it's like how you use it. AI, as far as like, I've used ChatGPT as far as like a copy editor, doing emails or, drafting documents, things like that. It's amazing. And my girlfriend
use it.
Yeah, my girlfriend's gotten to the point with ChatGPT, like where she's, it like knows her personality and like what kind of things, how the voice she wants to put things into. And so she's really utilizing it for that. And like, it levels up. I was listening to some guy talking today about like how, AI can summarize a 3-hour podcast like in a split second. So you get all the high level points from the podcast that you can like distill, but without having to spend 3 hours listening to it per se. So, but the other drawback to AI is that it can make us lazier because you can use it for creativity, but it almost can become a crutch where you're relying on it too much. Yeah, you're relying on it too much because you're like, oh, I'm just going to go plug this into the AI and get something that's amazing, but it's still nasty at like early days for it. So some people like they can tell if you put an email through ChatGPT because it'll come if you haven't honed it to your own voice, it can come across as like a oh, this has been optimized through AI. But so I think it's just one of those things like where it can be very scary because like I grew up. I don't know how many times I've seen the Terminator, but
my favorite movie,
yeah,
of all
too.
time.
I can quote it.
Which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite?
The original.
Okay,
the
very first one.
The first one I've seen probably like a dozen times or more. So
T1's great.
Yeah,
I grew up in the Judgment Day era, so that's my number one.
That's cool.
They're both 1 and 2 is fantastic.
Yeah. But and then like the hokey special effects during T1 was hilarious too. But
weren't they still good? Like even
for 1984 was pretty good. Like when that scene where he's cutting his eyeball out.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was like epic shit in 1984.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Schwarzenegger was just amazing the way he deadpans.
He
all
was
that
so
stuff.
good.
Yeah,
I actually heard that James Cameron casted him to play Kyle Reese, and then when they started, reading the script, like, wait a minute, we got to make a switch here.
Interesting.
He needs to play the Terminator.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a huge nerd with that shit.
I love pop culture stuff like that too. Yeah. So, you guys know who Chris Hardwick is?
Oh yeah,
he was a big podcaster in the early days too. But I went to high school with that guy.
Did you really?
And he's amazing. Yeah, really cool.
What's he doing now?
He's hosting The Wall and raising his daughter who just turned 3.
Okay.
So yeah, he married a woman and they had their he's my age, and they had their baby during COVID, and so now he's worked very hard for it. But he did the Nerdist podcast, and built up a whole thing being on being nerdy about pop culture, and like got all these different that was his podcast, and then he did Talking Dead, which was like the after show like discussion for Walking Dead.
Yeah, I think I watched some of that.
Yeah, and then he did like Talking Bad too, which I liked. Breaking Bad was one of my favorite
that
shows.
one was good, and it actually ended really good too.
It did.
That's
Breaking
the thing.
Bad?
Yeah. Have you seen that?
I've seen it, but I haven't finished it.
Okay, so
I'm
that's
like one
good.
of those spotty
That's good.
ones, like you with The Sopranos.
I'm watching The Sopranos for the first time right now, but I
love The Sopranos.
I know how that.
I haven't.
I've
but
seen
I'm
the
like partially into The Sopranos. My girlfriend lost interest, and so I haven't finished it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It was just so well done, like, for an American drama family series in the time that it took place. Like David Chase, the way he wrote that show was amazing.
Yeah. And that was a groundbreaking. That's what got us into having Breaking Bad and Dexter and all these like
pushing the boundaries,
long form series like that. So amazing writing and acting and all that stuff. Yeah, but Breaking Bad, Dexter, those kind of shows, like if they're good, you can rewatch them. I was so disappointed with Game of Thrones because I was like another one of those
that's
series.
season 8.
I never got into it.
Game of Thrones was amazing.
That was
until
so
it wasn't.
upsetting.
Yeah.
That's what I felt about The Walking Dead, though.
Really? Because I haven't seen The Walking Dead.
Like season 4, I was like,
really?
Yeah, I just lost interest.
And The Walking Dead is over, right?
I think it's been over for
now.
a
It's just
bit.
got the spinoffs.
Now there's all the spinoffs, which is what Yellowstone's going to be doing. I don't know if you watched Yellowstone.
I loved Yellowstone too, but my girlfriend, being veg, she couldn't handle the. She didn't like the way they weren't shy about how they showed like how livestock is handled and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it was very real with the way they filmed it. I feel like, which was good, gives the viewer like a real experience.
But I love the character development. I liked that rustic kind of American pioneer kind of attitude. And so, yeah, I know what you mean. Like those spinoffs, like 1923 and
Yep.
things like that.
A lot of them
But-
are coming. The Sixes Ranch, I heard, is going to be a show with Rip and Beth. And,
Oh, cool.
yeah, which is great because
Awesome.
everyone fell in love with Rip and Beth.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite. too,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Kevin Costner just kind of pieced out on the last season.
Interesting. Okay.
No spoiler alert there, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's all
mean,
good.
it's been happening.
it's been happening.
But yeah, good shows. So for my day job, I oversee like big implementation, change, technology, and AI is a big conversation with all that.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting having these AI conversations. So as far as like AI art and making like procedurally generated video games, like I feel like there is kind of a risk to some people's jobs and different industries as well.
Mhm.
But I feel like the one true way to foolproof have job security with AI growing is to learn it and actively use it because it will empower users to work differently.
Sure.
And so like
it's here to stay.
It levels you
yeah.
up if you use it correctly.
and just like everything, it always changes. Life
Mhm.
never stays the same, no
Sure.
matter how comfy it is and how
Mhm.
much you like this phase.
Yeah.
It's going to end eventually. So
Sure.
it's like we have to like stay
Embrace the
ready
change.
to change.
Well, think about when they first put in like self-checkout registers at the grocery store. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's taking jobs."
I love the Bill Burr bit on that. Have you seen
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, where he's like, "I don't work here."
It's like, what? I did my job. I loaded everything in the cart.
Yeah, I came up,
It's
I
like,
picked out what I
now
wanted.
I work here.
Yeah. I didn't know I was also a grocery store worker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, through time, right? Innovation. We saw even with AI, like when spell check came out. I remember people griping about that and be like, well, now people aren't going to know how to spell words. And
Predictive text and stuff
right,
like that.
all that kind of stuff. So we're just kind of seeing it, I think, now at an elevated speed,
Mhm.
of route to market with AI. But I think the area that concerns me is when it gets involved with health. A lot of what this big $1 billion investment is with this
Sure.
AI health thing in Texas. When you're relying completely and taking that human element out, and now these are going to be, the pharmaceutical makers, and a lot of that's going through AI. I'm not an expert in any of that, but it can be concerning.
Sure. It's, again, nuanced, whereas AI can look at things and like run a gajillion experiments without doing the work that it would take a lab, like years to do. It can do it in like, a fraction of the time.
Sure.
So it can level up things like that. The main professions that I think it's coming for are like your accounting, your law, kind of things like that, where before you needed to be credentialed and go through, have a lot of experience in that. Whereas like if the AI can get good enough at it, it's like, why would you go to an attorney when you can plug it into an AI and get it kicked out in a matter of minutes for a fraction of the cost?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. It's gonna, I think it's gonna, because originally they were like, oh, it's gonna affect all these, blue collar jobs, but there's lots of things you're gonna need. Like the saying, you need like fingers and eyes to be able to do it. And while AI can do things a lot better, I was listening to this fascinating guy who I like on YouTube called Doomberg, who's in the geopolitical and energy space. But he said, he was talking about because it was a similar discussion, like, is AI gonna ruin the world? And it's like, people want that human interactions. And he was using the example of like chess. Like a computer can beat a human at chess, like no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's like this whole niche where people will spend hours watching humans play chess because it's unpredictable. The AI or the computer is always going to make the most optimal choice, whereas humans, it's like, it's unpredictable. Like, what are they going to do? So he was describing it in this terms, like there's always going to be that as things get more and more perfect with AI and those sorts of things, there'll be a demand, and at least in his opinion, that there will be, have a human element to it, because it's the unpredictability of our cognition and how we process things. So
That's an interesting take on it. Yeah. Especially with the chess thing. Like, and just people do like to watch other people do things now.
mhm.
Like even this podcasting stuff, when it first came out, before we got into it, people were like, you're just going to sit there and watch two people have a conversation that, we don't know anything about or whatever. People thought it was kind of like, why would you do that? And this has kind of been a lost art of just getting together and having real conversations when everyone's just so buried in their phone all the time, right?
Yeah.
So normalizing this stuff, I think, is also one of the missions, with our show.
Yeah.
And it's just great. It's the lost art of shooting shit about the Terminator and AI and God knows what else.
Exactly. And that long form, conversational podcast, I think that's one of Joe Rogan is probably the GOAT for
He's the king, yeah.
for the podcast, but it's because it's how he leads the conversation, and he's not like throwing gotcha moment things at it. It's just like how it naturally evolves and organically, and that's what makes it more enjoyable to listen to. It's not like this artificial like, oh, he's going to ask this and this. It's
Right.
just kind of the conversation can go off in multiple tangents. So
Yeah, that's what people like. Instead of your Jimmy Fallon, 5 seconds, 5 minutes of fame on his show,
precisely.
you get 3 hours of juice from a celebrity you've watched forever or whatever. It's
Yeah, like when
you get the behind
Zuckerberg
the
was
scenes.
talking about,
Zuckerberg was a great app. I
Yeah.
don't know if
I
you
haven't
watched
seen
that.
that one yet.
he was saying some stuff that I was like, man, we knew this was going on.
He was talking
With
the
all the,
crazy stuff
Yeah.
Yeah, with all the censorship and everything.
with the
Yeah.
censorship. Because he basically came out and said we're reversing a lot of that policy.
Mhm.
He gave Elon a lot of praise with what he's doing over there at X with this less censorship. We're seeing a big shift happening.
I think we would be in a completely different society if Elon had not bought X. And love him or hate him, he was able to facilitate that change, that sea change, as far as like, no, we're not going to quash free speech. I'm not a that's the beauty of our country, is that we have the First Amendment, and it doesn't mean that you have to be on board with what you have to be able to. Allow the idiot neo Nazis to march parade through a Jewish neighborhood, but also have the fact that you can't like that allows us to have free speeches versus like oh well that is evil, and it's like it comes to the point of like, well, who decides what's good and bad,
Right.
Yeah.
because that's the dangerous thing that I think that we kind of teetered towards during COVID, which it was like I always thought that the fascist inclination was going to come from the right, like the jackbooted Nazis, and then during the COVID phenomenon, I was like, oh my god, I was a lifelong Democrat, and all of a sudden it's like the left seemed to just like go so far totalitarian. It's like you either agree with us or you're an evil person. Right. Like, that's not how I grew up here. So
It's been
it was
interesting.
a very
to see that
eye-opening
shift.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about this subject specifically has gotten things demonetized.
Oh, yeah.
I was to say, yeah.
Like we got booted off of X.
We got kicked off of X. Well, that's back when it was Twitter.
For talking this type of, and we say we're not medical experts here. These are opinions.
I got myself in a lot of trouble during COVID.
It's crazy.
Just saying my thoughts on it.
And that's why it's so scary, because it was so chilling. It's like, and it was like it showed like how quickly things can, even in a beautiful democracy like America is, like how things can go skew totalitarian very quickly. So
it's I guess it's because it's just there already and it's hiding better. Is that why? Because I feel like, if the narrative causes division between citizens, then it gets perpetualized. But if you switch a narrative to empowerment of citizens, and like, you don't need alcohol, you don't need pharmaceuticals. Like, I got over opiates, so I'm like very anti that whole thing. And like, there's natural fixes to a lot of stuff.
There is.
And like, they don't want that out there. And I've even heard like there's like, because my dad has cancer, and so I'm like finding all this cancer stuff, and my wife like does cancer research stuff, and she's like, did you see this thing where this guy basically like found that if you mix flaxseed oil with cottage cheese like in a certain dose, then it like helps cure cancer, but then he disappeared all of a sudden. Like that people come up with this stuff, so you have to be careful about what you're truthful about. And I think if you attack the big money, then that's when they get upset. But if it's causing division in the society, that's okay.
Well, that's exactly what happened and is happening. I mean, people are absolutely outraged over what's going on with Doge.
Exactly.
I mean, they're so upset about it.
Which I don't understand, because to me it's like, I was listening to this one guy's take, is like, so you're more upset that Doge is uncovering like horrible misallocation of funds and basically the money laundering. It's like, oh, we're going to fund it through USAID or whatever, and put it into all these like very focused ideological pet projects. You're more upset about it being shown into the disinfectant of sunlight versus the fact that this graft was happening. Like, that our taxpayer dollars were being used to fund things that like it's like a 80-20 issues. It's like,
oh yeah,
most people are like, why aren't we taking care of stuff here? Where I agree that we can do good in with our foreign policy, but it's like it's weird at how people are going. So against what Doge is uncovering versus like the fact that the stuff exists. It's like
That's what's alarming to me. I think it's more the faces behind it. They just are not going to get behind Elon. They're not going to get behind President Trump, no matter what the case is. But for me, I like the transparency, and
I do too.
And seeing what's been going on. I think that's been eye opening for me. I mean, like $20 million to Sesame Street programs overseas or something like that. Just so many ridiculous things. This whole list came out, and they're just getting started.
Exactly.
So I'm optimistic. I try to be, I'm not a pessimist, regardless of who's in the White House.
Sure.
We got to remain optimistic, and there is good things happening.
And I'll just say, like I've always voted, but last presidency, I did not vote because I didn't believe in either person. I'm not a fan of Trump, but I'm not going to sit here and waste my energy being upset and like sending hateful energy toward that whole thing because I feel like that's a waste of my energy.
But, and as Americans, we should all want whoever's in office to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where I was going to go with that. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of Trump's personality either. I feel like he has been much changed by nearly having his head blown off.
That was nuts.
That was an inflection point in this country that had it gone the other way. I think we'd be having a different conversation if we'd be even having a conversation right now.
Yeah.
But I loved the fact that, and again, the guy Doomberg I was discussing, he pointed out that like these are all former Democrats that have gotten so frustrated with how the Democratic Party has been showing up that they're now like, I don't consider myself a Republican, but I align much more with people that are like, more for truth and transparency and, government efficiency and different things like that. I'm thrilled that Tulsi Gabbard got confirmed today.
She's confirmed, yeah. RFK's up tomorrow.
I think they're discussing him today too.
Is he okay?
And Kash Patel.
And Kash Patel, yeah.
But I'm really excited that also to have RFK.
Me too.
As a person who can affect change. Like I don't know why we are allowed to be fed toxins that are not allowed in our neighbors to the north in Canada or in Europe, but here you can go in and eat food that's like slathered in seed oils that they use to lubricate machinery and be fed all these petrochemicals and then wonder why our obesity rates are so high, our autism rates are so high,
all in cahoots.
Our cancer rates are so high. And it's like you see it as I love it's such a stark contrast when you look at people on the beach in the 50s and 60s and then when all these like seed oils and petrochemicals became like legalized in the US for profitable reasons, all of a sudden our obesity rates just started spiking. It's like why like 70% of young American men are not eligible for military service because they're obese. It's like it's just, and then again during COVID, like the correlation between obesity and negative outcomes if you've got COVID, it was just so sad. That was the number one comorbidity would be that you're morbidly obese or obese in general, and that it would cause like wreak all this havoc in your body. So
yeah, I'm optimistic that we get to the bottom of a lot of it.
I'm excited that we could have some changes that would like make America healthy again, like where we ban seed oils, we ban like artificial dyes,
red dyes,
we do all these things that like the rest of the world or advanced world seems to have gotten on board with, and it's like why are we still allowed to do that? It just seems like a crime against our citizenry that like I'm more hesitant to go out and eat. I was going to go to Noodles the other day. It used to be one of my, it's easy fast food. And I was like, but I Googled up, what do they cook their food in? What kind of oils do they cook their food in? And it's all seed oils. And so it's like, I don't want to.
Panda Express too? Please tell me no.
I know. Yeah. I don't want to like dump all this inflammatory agents into my body.
Meal like at least twice a month.
Sure.
Just like a complete.
And I believe in, like moderation.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be like a monk about it, but
yeah.
The more you learn, the more you learn. And it's like, you understand that like how, fundamental it is for our health is like, what you put into your body. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's hope he gets confirmed. I think he will. I think the hard part's over for him. And again, the pushback, just I listen to a lot of the grilling, and you're going to get that on both sides of the aisle, of course, but just any and everything they can to try to, not progress any of these, appointed positions.
And it's all tied into the money of the big pharma and big ag and all these different things that like these are trillions of dollars of money. And I think that's what the people are losing their mind about Doge too, is just like, it was just regardless of who was in office, it was just this like constant cash flow for people who was like, I don't like the term deep state, but unelected bureaucrats who can, put their thumb on the scale of which way they want things to go but they were not elected. So, yeah. I'm optimistic for change. I think that's this was a big change election.
Big.
Love whether you're happy with the outcome or not. I'm so thrilled that it was a majority popular election. It wasn't like, oh, well, it was so close we can't tell. It was a definitive, like, the direction we're going isn't working. We need to change something. And I'm really heartened that, the whole thing with the way that they gaslit us with, Biden's fine. And then all of a sudden, like, he went on the stage and everyone around him knew that was going to happen. But when he disintegrated on that first debate, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is horrible." It's like, this has been going on for 4 years.
Yeah, where you been?
Yeah.
And then to have, the party that was saying, "Oh, our democracy is at threat," and then they just like insert Harris into the presidency nomination without any
she was
primary, nothing. She never won a single primary vote.
Yeah.
Never
The hypocrisy is what I find alarming.
Yeah, and that to me is insulting. Again, as a lifelong Democrat.
That's why I was like, fuck it.
I totally appreciate that.
So I do have something to say for both sides here, okay? And that is that this life always is full of chaos. It's always full of chaos.
Sure.
When Biden was in, it was full of chaos. All the presidents, every single president that's ever existed, there's chaotic things, there's change happening, and it's like you have to find peace in the mayhem. And that's like that's a personal choice.
Right.
And to get to that choice, you have to allow yourself to be and stop allowing all of the external influences to control you.
Sure.
So
I agree.
That's my piece of advice to anybody who's like posting all these, oh, it's going to be a hard 4 years. Well, with that attitude, for sure, it is going to be a hard 4 years.
Yeah.
Maybe you can change your attitude and then actually change your perspective and enjoy what we have, because like it's not going to change. The president is the president for the next 4 years, so you just want to choose to be miserable and upset about that. That does not make sense to me.
One of my buddies pointed out that he got this from the book, The Habits of Highly Successful People. It's like, if you're spending your time just like, worrying about like, oh, this person's in charge now, my life is going to be shit. It's like, well, you're going to get what you put out there. Right. And it's like, is that the best use of your time, or should we be focusing more on like your things, the other
what you can control,
things you have control over and things you don't have control over, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So, having that taking and then also taking like accountability and agency in your own life. Like, these are things I have control over. Like, I'm frustrated with how things are going at the business, but it's like, I can't control, the macro economic conditions, nor can I control directly what the city is doing. But all I can control is like, are my employees getting what the resources that they need? Am I providing the support so that they can create a welcoming retail environment? I was so happy. I told you guys when I was coming in, I'm 3 weeks out today from getting my hip replaced. So I was 2 weeks out of the shop, which is a big deal for me as a small business owner. And when I stopped in on Friday last week, and I was just thrilled. Like, you could tell it's like not a Lord of the Flies situation where that can go either way. But I have such good employees that I came in and I was just like blown away, like how well they've been using their time. Because awesome. If I'm not there, my main thing is like, how are my employees using their downtime? And when I come in and see that the shop's beautifully merchandised and it's clean and it looks like somebody did things purposely and thoughtfully, it was just really, really good. And that's something I have control over. That's my little bit of the universe that I have control over. And in spite of the downturn in foot traffic and things like that, I'm still wanting everyone who does come in that door to be wowed with the experience that they have in the shop. So that does give you a sense of accomplishment. So
that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's going to turn around this year.
Yes,
I'm hopeful. Yeah, I'm optimistic. Like I said, I'm keep on the sunny side of the street kind of guy, and I'm thinking by Q2, Q3 this year, when these things, and there's a big lag effect as far as like people are throwing shade on the administration. It's like they've been in office for 3 weeks, guys. Like it's going to take it's like trying to turn an aircraft carrier. You're not going to turn it on a dime.
Yeah. So
it's going to take a minute for new policies to free up commerce and things like that, so that people, because I just, that's what I noticed is like coming into Q4 last year, people were just like, when things are uncertain, people pull back on their spending. And I'm hopeful that, like, when things are going swimmingly economically, people aren't bickering about like little side issues here and there. They everyone kind of seems to be more optimistic and congenial than when things are, if things are tight, that's when you get more relationship
A little more
quarrels.
friction.
It's like, because if money is tight, it creates a lot of stress
A lot of tension.
on everybody,
Mhm.
from your close personal relationships up to your bigger economic issues. So
It's too true. I feel like we're really just scratching the surface
Oh, this could be a Rogan. I feel
on
like
this conversation. So we generally, if we really like who we have on, we always want to get them back in,
sure.
and so we're gonna keep you in the wheelhouse.
Okay, I'd love to come back on.
Yeah, we like to get like an annual touch point, just
Cool.
see how the year's been treating, and then people who listen, they're like, "What's going on with Rob?"
Sure.
And then of course you have our support for Dog Savvy.
Thank you. Appreciate
Everyone
that.
should check out Dog Savvy on Larimer Street.
Yes.
We're going to leave some links for that below. Same with the GoFundMe. We talked about kind of earlier on the episode how there's light at the end of this tunnel, and you can help the company see the light.
Yeah, and we are so grateful for our customers, and I'm so proud of our grooming staff as well, because we have pivoted, as I'm sure your wife has told you, that we do fear-free, gentle touch grooming, humanity over vanity. We are there to steward the dogs through what for them is a wholly unnatural and stressful experience, and kind of make a cozy, calm environment, so that we guide them through, as opposed to just like treating them like a car going through a car wash. We are present there for the dogs. To tie back to the original part of the discussion, if you're not present with the dogs, they feel it, and then they're going to be more stressed and resistant to the grooming process. So yeah, just really proud of my grooming staff, and so grateful for all of our customers. So
Absolutely.
terrific. Well, great business. We wish you continued success.
really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, this was a great combo. So thanks for your time. And until
Thanks for
next
having
time.
me.
Yeah, we're out of here.
It's fun. This is how we do a podcast.
This is it.
Yeah,
Cool.
and thank you for being a podcast listener as well.
I'm grateful for the
Yes.
for the medium, because it's just like, what did I used to do with my time before I could kill a couple hours on a podcast?
Yeah.
I'm starting to get into the audiobooks, but hey, we're probably going to keep talking a little bit once
Right.
these mics go off. Great conversation, and we look forward to talking with you again.
I'd
soon.
be happy to come back. So
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We'll get you back in the next year. So everybody out there, Kevin got something to say about Happy Friday.
Yes, we'll see you on Happy Friday tomorrow. Thanks for supporting this YouTube channel. Mash that subscribe button. Follow us on whatever listening platform that you're on. We certainly appreciate it. Be good to yourselves.
You deserve it.